Welcome to United We Stand. I'm Burton Wolf, your host. United We Stand is a program that's dedicated to challenges and issues that our students here at HCC may be concerned with, our state, our government, our country, and issues globally. And we're so happy today to have a great guest. Chikako Tsuruta is a professor at the University of Tokyo Foreign Studies. And she is a wonderful professor, and speech communication and interpretation are her expertise. And today we're going to talk about education in Japan and here in the US and the similarities and the differences. So first of all, welcome. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. Now, let me give a little bit of a self-introduction as to what I do at Tokyo University of Foreign Studies.
Great.
I teach interpreting there, and I myself am a professional interpreter, and I also do media interpreting to interpret US news or British news or foreign news, world news into Japanese. As a professor at Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, I teach my students, the young aspiring future interpreters, simultaneous interpreting.
That's fabulous. So you really have a good handle on leaders in politics and in government and what's going on between our nations. And also, of course, you have been educated here in the States too, is that right?
Yes, that is correct, yes.
You went to Columbia University?
Yes, I majored in business administration in early 1960s. And I was 9 years old at the time, and I came here to the United States not knowing a word of English. And at that time, United States and Japan, I think our levels of living was very different. Coming from a more close kind of a society,
right.
And yes, to see, you know, different kinds of race and different kinds of culture and
right.
ethnic backgrounds.
Right.
Yes, in the society. Well, it used to be called melting pot. Now it's more of a salad bowl that you say. But yes, that was a very, very fresh experience for me.
Great.
We lived nearby the George Washington Bridge in a place called Fort Lee in New Jersey.
Right.
And that's where I went to public school number 1. I still remember the name.
Good.
After we went back to Japan from the United States, and I had my junior high education in Japan. I had my high school education in New Delhi, India, at this American International School. And then I went back to Japan for my university education and then worked a little bit for a few years. And then I went to the United States to get my MBA.
So I'm glad that you have this background here in America, and you're a good expert to talk about the differences and similarities of our educational systems. Let's talk about students in Japan. Are they dedicated to achieving an outstanding education in Japan? Are they motivated? What's your feeling about that?
My students, they're very motivated. In my case, since I train students to become aspiring to be interpreters, to do the interpreting and translation work if they want to do that in the future. So they come with strong motivation that they want to be communicators in general.
Right.
Even if they don't become professional interpreters or translators, they have this skill of knowing about the multilingual and multicultural societies that is out there in the global stage. And since, you know, it is much more a globalized world now than the days I went to school at Columbia. And generally speaking, I would say that people who want to go to university want to go because they want to get university education. They want to get university degree because that is what is still necessary if you want to get good job, good position.
That's very interesting. And does it guarantee a good job?
It's not necessarily the case that nothing is guaranteed, but in Japan we have a tradition of screening students through entrance exam that is quite rigid, and we just go by the numbers, how many points you can get on the entrance exam. And comparing the system that I went through, the American high school education that I had back in New Delhi, well, I think it is better if you can have a multiple chance, like if you can sit for SAT exam, a few times before you select your top score. But in Japan, it is not necessarily the case. You can sit for this kind of like a similar system to SAT just once, and
I
you
see.
get
Well,
the
it's
grade.
much
Yes.
more competitive, isn't it, in
Yes,
Japan?
I think so.
We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about that competitive nature for Japanese students and compare it to here in the USA. We'll be back shortly with United We Stand. Welcome back to United We Stand. I'm Burton Wolf, your host, and today we have a wonderful special guest. Chikako Tsuruta is a professor in Japan. She flew here to be with us on television, and we're talking about the differences and the similarities of education in Japan. And we were talking about entrance exams and how students prepare and the stiff competition, I believe, in Japan.
Yes.
Tell
So-
us about that.
Yes, maybe you have heard about this, how cram schools are there in Japan, so that people start as early as a second grade in elementary school. Isn't that amazing? In order to get into a good junior high school, so that would prepare you to get into a good high school and then eventually to college. So the schools that have what you call from K to 12, the good private schools that you prepare you to go into a good university. Usually, if they have a university that is associated with it, it is the really, really very high competition at kindergarten level to
Wow.
get in. Even it starts as early
Oh
as
my
that. Isn't
goodness.
that amazing? I
and
think
that's why
very
the tension
different.
we understand in Japan of students taking the entrance exam are truly motivated, and there's a great deal of pressure. Is that correct?
Yes, I think there's much pressure because, as I said, there's only one chance to sit for a similar test to SAT, and that would give you the first stage grade. Then you have the second stage, which is that you sit for the entrance exam for a particular university. But you really have to achieve a good
Academic level.
yes,
Yeah.
in order to be qualified and also to do well on that exam.
Now, in Japan, I believe that the levels of degree are the same from your bachelor's degree to master's to a PhD doctorate
Yes.
degree. Is it the same years of study that one has to do?
That's right. It's 4 years for bachelor's and 2 years for master's. Plus, if you want to have the PhD, that's another 3 years. So 5 years in the MA PhD, yes.
And we were discussing about the participation in classroom.
Right.
From kindergarten straight up, is it more lecture or is there participation? Even little children,
Yes.
It's still more lecture?
I think it's usually the case that both the students and the teachers will expect that it is more lecture style. It is the communication from the teacher's side and not necessarily the class participation or the interaction. That's what I found to be very different, talking about my experience, but in general terms, I think that's also true.
And do you think there's a value in participation of students?
I sincerely believe so, because I think we need to be good communicators, because the world is becoming so much smaller. It's much more a global society, and it's not the case for either the Japan or the United States that we can just stay in our own country and finish our life there, but we need to go out more and to be a global player. And for that to happen, we need to be more interactive, even in our own countries.
Countries, right. How about seeking jobs? It used to be, when I had hair on my head, it used to be that when you had a good college or university degree, you were practically guaranteed a job. Here in America right now, that's not really the case. Is it still the case in Japan? You graduate from a college or university, you're a good academic student, you've graduated, now you can move on and easily get a job.
Well, yes, it gives you higher probability, more opportunities to be interviewed by good companies and land a good job. But you also have to go through the job hunting process.
You still do?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it is still, as is the case for an entrance exam, it is very competitive. And also, the unique feature is different from here. It's really a set, calendar. So you do it according to the calendar, like you start job hunting, it became much earlier than when I was looking for a job myself. But it used to be that you start in your last year in college. Now it's the case that you start in your third year in college already to do the job hunting screening process. And you have to really study for that. There are written tests even that some companies administer. So it's really competitive there as well.
Right, and it's quite formal, I think, in
Yes,
comparison
it is.
to America.
Right, right.
And we discussed earlier that when our students are selected to go to a college or university, the selection includes the student's background. Do they play a
Right.
musical instrument? Do they donate time to a not-for-profit organization? But in Japan, I understand the selection is merely or very highly rated on their academic achievement.
Yes, and especially how you do on your entrance exam. And well, there are several exceptions, and there are what is called admission office entrance exams administered by some universities, and also my university itself started doing this just this year. But there you look at more of the kind of special expertise that the student might have, like does the student play violin very well, or has the student won any kind of a competition, and that kind of a special credential.
I see.
Yes.
Should there be student-teacher exchanges? Do we have many students from Japan come here, or American students go to Japan?
Yes, but I think we can definitely have more.
Yeah.
Because I heard that there's 6,000 American students each year coming to Japan.
To
and
Japan.
something like 20,000 Japanese students coming to United States to study, which is a very high percentage. I think it was something like 68,000 Japanese students go abroad for study, and then if it's 20,000 out of that, the high proportion comes to the United States. But I think we can have more American students.
I think, as you previously stated, the fact that we're becoming this international global economy,
Right.
and it's so good for our students to travel. It's a great education. You yourself, how do you equate your own traveling and your lifestyle and your ability? Do you feel that contributed to your own education?
Definitely so.
Yeah.
In my case, it happened by chance. I did not choose that I go abroad for latter half of my elementary school education, or I go to New Delhi for my high school education. But it happened by chance. But I put both my children to study abroad as an international exchange student. My son in the United States, my daughter in Australia for 1 year if they were still in high school.
Perfect.
I think that kind of a students exchange beginning even as early as junior high school or high school, I think would be definitely an advantage, and I highly recommend that.
Great. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, because you teach interpreting and political translation, I'd like to talk about your suggestion that we talk today about preparing our leaders, our political leaders. So when we come back, I'd be very interested. We're in debates right now here in America.
Yes,
so let's
I know
talk,
that. Yes.
Let's talk about preparing our leaders when we come back.
Fine, thank
We'll
you.
be back shortly with United We Stand. Welcome back to United We Stand. I'm Burton Wolf, your host. Today we have a great guest. Chikako Tsuruta is from Japan. She flew here especially to be on the show, and we're talking about education in Japan and here in the USA, the differences and similarities. And we are going to talk about educating our leaders of the future. Do you have special courses in Japan about that? We're going into our debates here in
Yes.
America. Do you prepare political leaders in Japan?
Well, now one of the schools, Kyoto University, has started doing that at a master's level. It's selecting just 20 students and putting them in dormitory and really try to educate them to be the future leaders. But, generally speaking, I think what needs to be done is good English skills, yes, and good communication skills.
So English is still the universal language
Yes.
here on Earth. And
Yes,
so
right.
That English communication skill is important.
Right.
And besides the English skills, what about the knowledge of cultures globally? since our political leaders will be political leaders globally. It's no
Exactly.
longer isolated countries.
Right.
So what's your feeling about that?
I think we all need to understand that the issue of the multicultural and multi-ethnic, and that we need to have a shared understanding that there are different people living on this earth,
Right.
and that we should try to understand that we are here on this global, on this planet together, so that we need to be able to be communicating to each other.
Communicating. And you know what? When we have that kind of global vision, probably it'll erase prejudice and fear and probably create more peace on the planet. What do you think about that?
I totally agree, and I think what we need is more communication, and for that, English is de facto universal language. Yes, we need to be communicating in English, right?
I see.
Yes.
Great, great. Do you have English competitions in Japan?
Oh yes, and I myself act as a judge for speech contests in English oratorical, English speaking contests, yes. So I see many students trying to do their best on stage, and I understand you're a teacher of speech communication.
I am, and
Yes.
I quite love it.
Mm-hmm.
And our students here at this college are really multicultural, which
Right.
in itself is a great achievement. Now, Japan itself is becoming more multicultural.
Yes. Multicultural, multilingual, yes.
Right. So what's the percentage of foreign students? A small percentage, I think you said.
Yes, I think we need to have more, really, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the seeking of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because here in the U.S. it's getting more difficult. And how is it in Japan right now?
It is getting more difficult because of the bad economic times, unfortunately. But I always believe that if you have good motivation and if you really have the will to do what you like to do in life, I think the opportunity would present itself.
Well, I think you're right, and I shared with you in my speech class just yesterday, we talked about the word intention.
Mm-hmm.
And when a student, whether they come from a high, successful economic background, or perhaps they're coming from one family, one parent raising them, if the student is motivated, highly motivated, then they here can get scholarships and they can really do well in their education and then in their job. Are there scholarships in Japan? How does the economic thing work for
Yes.
education?
Yes, all right. In Japan, it used to be that, well, the national universities, the tuition is very low. It was only like something like 2,000 yen per month, which is what, 100 yen per exchange rate. That's only $20. Now the cost, the tuition for national university has gone up, but still it's relatively low compared to private universities. And the good thing about competition, sitting for the entrance exam, is if you have achieved well on the entrance exam, even if you come from very poor background, that you can get into a top level university, and that would land you a very good job at a private company or government job, and then that you really be quite successful in the society. So it's by merit that you succeed.
That's terrific. So again, the academic achievement is the litmus test.
That's right.
Right.
Yes, and talking about scholarships, yes, there are scholarships offered, but not as much as here in the United States. But I think considerably it's relatively lower compared to the United States. I mean, the tuition for university in general.
So in kind of wrapping up our discussion
Yes.
about the differences and similarities of education in Japan and here in the U.S., what do you think we can learn from the Japanese system? How can we improve, or our students learn from Japanese students, and vice versa? What do you feel Japanese educators, the system, students can learn from our American system? If we're learning from each other, we'll both get stronger.
I totally agree, and since I've been through both systems, and from my perspective, as I've been saying, I think interaction, we can use more of an interaction in Japanese university classes like you do here. And I think we can start even earlier, not just from the university level, but even from the elementary school level, to try to have more of an interaction.
Rather than the teacher stands in front of the class.
Yes, and gives lectures.
And gives lectures.
Yes, but
right.
at the same time, I think maybe we can use more of an organization or discipline
Here in the
yes,
U.S.
maybe, yes, to
Well-
get the kids to clean the floor if you're elementary school students. That's what we do in elementary school. We get the kids to clean the classrooms after the classes are finished, and we ask the students to, the kids, the pupils to set the tables for school lunches and things like that. And we do learn the teamwork or the organization of how to do things as a group, even at that early age. I mean, I don't think, elementary schools here ask pupils to, do that sort of thing. But
I
yes.
think that's wonderful, because I'm a professor of theater too, and
Right.
I'm a director of actors. I emphasize in my speech classes that you are part of a group, you're part of a team.
Right.
Don't let your fellow classmates down. You let the class down, you let me down.
Right.
And so if we have a speech assignment, if you're on a debate team or you are speaking on a topic with partners, you have to be disciplined. You have to meet them out of school and discuss it and do your homework as a team. So there's much more responsibility to one another in Japan, would you
Yes,
say?
I think it's and discipline, and also to organize yourselves as a team and to try to be strong as a team. I think that's one of the good qualities that is naturally taught through Japanese education system. And I do think that individual merits and individual achievements and participation in class, to make appeal, to present yourself in class, that kind of qualities, I think American education system does very well, and I think we have a lot to learn from that.
We can learn from each other.
Yes.
What about if we take a group of teachers and students from Houston to Japan and meet with you, maybe over the summer for 2 weeks or something like that? Or do the reverse, you come back here with a group of students. Do you think that would be of value?
I definitely think that's going to be of value, and I think that is already done, but I think we can use more of that. And there is discussion nowadays going on in Japan that if we change the academic year to start in fall rather than in April, which is currently the case, with the cherry blossoms, which is nice, but if we have the same academic year as usually is the case in here in the United States.
Then it would be a real match, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that might make it easier for international students.
Thank you so much for being here on United We Stand. I look forward to seeing you in Tokyo and bringing some professors from Houston Community College and students from here and
Great.
visiting you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And viewing audience of United We Stand, look forward to seeing you again on our next topic. Thank you for joining us.